The mistake of the century. The gleaming hull of the starship Shadowfang prowled through the void, its razor-like silhouette a dark contrast against the brilliant scatter of stars. Captain Vrex Talcor, a seasoned and ruthless commander of the Lyran Corsairs, stood on the bridge, his piercing amber eyes locked onto a small, unsuspecting vessel in the distance. The ship, painted in cheerful tones of white and blue, floated serenely, the words Solar Voyager II emblazoned on its side. It seemed utterly defenseless, almost childlike in its simplicity. "Are you certain it's human?" Vrex's voice carried an edge, his scaled fingers gripping the edge of his command chair. His second in command, Lieutenant Karish Rin, a wiry and nervous Lyran with dark plumage lining his head, nodded hesitantly. "Scans confirm it, Captain. Minimal defenses, just life support and basic navigation systems. It's practically begging to be taken." Vrex allowed himself a predatory grin. Humans were dangerous, yes, but the wealth they carried often outweighed the risk. And this ship looked like easy prey, perfect for a quick raid. "Prepare the harpoons, lock it down, and reel it in." The crew sprang into action, their reptilian forms darting between consoles and weapon systems. The Shadowfang extended its magnetic harpoons, latching onto the Solar Voyager with an audible clang. Slowly, the smaller ship was dragged into the Corsair's docking bay. Vrex turned to Karish, his confidence radiating. "Let's see what treasures these humans have left for us." An unusual welcome. As the boarding ramp lowered, Vrex and a dozen heavily armed Corsairs strode into the captured vessel. They expected cowering passengers, frightened cries, or perhaps resistance. Instead, they were greeted by 6 small figures standing in a neat row, dressed in matching gray and blue jumpsuits with badges that read Earth Federation, Space Scout Division. The tallest, a boy with dark brown hair and sharp green eyes, stepped forward. He couldn't have been older than 12. "Greetings," he said, his tone steady and unsettlingly calm. "I'm Ethan Price, leader of this squad. You're interfering with an official mission of the Space Scouts." The Corsairs exchanged bewildered glances. Vrex narrowed his eyes, trying to suppress the unease creeping into his thoughts. Children. Humans had sent children into deep space. Karish stepped closer, inspecting the group. "They're unarmed, Captain. Just kids." "Not just kids," Ethan corrected, his gaze unwavering. "We're trained explorers, and I suggest you release us immediately." The audacity of the child's words sent ripples of laughter through the Corsair crew. Vrex sneered. "Bold words, little one. You're aboard my ship now. I decide what happens next." Behind Ethan, a younger girl with curly hair, no older than 8, smirked faintly. The expression didn't match the innocence of her small frame. It was as if she knew something they didn't. Tensions rise. Vrex ordered his crew to separate the children, placing each in individual holding cells. The Corsairs couldn't shake the strange aura of confidence the young captives exuded. Even alone, they didn't scream or cry. Instead, they observed their surroundings with keen interest. Ethan's voice echoed through the comm system as he was led away. "You're making the huge mistake, Captain. We're not the ones you should be worried about." In the dimly lit break, one of the smallest captives, a freckle-faced boy named Liam, quietly pulled a tiny device from the lining of his sleeve. It looked unassuming, a simple cube of polished metal, but as he clicked a hidden button, the walls of his cell shimmered faintly before returning to normal. He grinned. "Phase 1 activated," he whispered to himself. The galactic warning. Back on the Shadowfang's bridge, an incoming transmission flashed urgently on the main screen. Vrex waved it off. "Ignore it. Prioritize setting a course to the nearest Corsair outpost." Karish hesitated. "Captain, it's flagged as high priority from the Galactic Federation." "Doesn't matter," Vrex growled. "Humans have credits. Their governments will pay dearly for their offspring." The lieutenant reluctantly complied, but the message continued to blink persistently, a silent omen of impending disaster. Miles away, aboard the Galactic Federation's Central Station, Ambassador Thrillin Vols, a dignified elder of the Andric species, paced in growing panic. The latest intelligence report on his desk detailed the Corsair's capture of 6 space scouts. Thrillin's usual composure wavered as he barked orders to his aides. "Get me an emergency line to Earth, immediately." Earth's ambassador, Eliza Moran, appeared on his screen moments later. Her face, lined with years of experience, was stern but betrayed a flicker of alarm. "What's happened, Thrillin?" "Ambassador," Thrillin began gravely, "we have an incident. A Corsair ship has captured a team of your space scouts." Eliza's expression darkened. "They what?" "They don't seem to understand the magnitude of their error," Thrillin continued. "If we don't act quickly, the Corsairs might not live long enough to regret it." The calm before the storm. In her cell, one of the children, a petite girl with braids named Sophia, used a hidden wristband to scan the energy matrix of the ship. Her calm, calculated demeanor reflected years of training. Energy shield frequency identified. She muttered to herself, "We'll have full control within the hour." Meanwhile, Ethan sat cross-legged in his cell, meditating. He wasn't just a leader in name. His mind was a weapon, sharpened through endless simulations and survival missions. The Corsairs had no idea what kind of adversaries they had just locked aboard their ship. As the ship hummed through the silence of space, the children's quiet actions began weaving the threads of a counterstrike. The Shadowfang and its crew were about to learn the hard way what it meant to cross not just humans, but Earth's best and brightest. Little did Vrex know, the countdown to chaos had already begun, the calm before the tempest. The brig of the Shadowfang hummed with the rhythmic vibrations of the ship's engines, its metal walls a patchwork of decades-old wear. Inside one of the cramped cells, Rose, the smallest of the captured humans, swung her legs idly from the edge of her bunk. Her flaming red hair, tied into neat buns, gave her an air of youthful innocence, but her emerald eyes shimmered with a spark far too cunning for her age. From a hidden compartment in her boot, Rose retrieved a sleek cylindrical device no larger than a candy bar. With a quiet hum, it activated, projecting a soft blue hologram into the air, a schematic of the Shadowfang. Phase 1 was Liam's job, she whispered to herself. Phase 2's all mine. On the other side of the brig, Ethan, their unofficial leader, leaned against the wall of his cell. His arms were crossed, his gaze focused on the door. He didn't need to see Rose to know she was already working. He had handpicked every member of this Space Scout team, each trained for situations like this. "Don't rush it, Rose," he murmured through his calm earpiece, hidden in the collar of his jumpsuit. Rose grinned. "You're no fun." The enemy's arrogance. On the bridge, Captain Vrex Talcor surveyed the stars ahead, the captured vessel now securely docked in the cargo bay. His mind danced with the possibilities of wealth and status these human children could bring him. Surely Earth would empty its treasuries to ensure the safety of its offspring. Karish. Vrex barked, glancing at his first officer, status on the prisoners. Karish hesitated, his sharp talons tapping nervously against his console. "Secured, Captain." "But they're unnervingly calm." "For children, I mean." "They're humans." Vrex snapped. "Their arrogance runs in their blood. Let them stew in their cells." The Corsair captain ignored the unease prickling at the back of his mind. Karish, however, couldn't shake the strange sense of impending disaster. Something about those children felt wrong. The first sparks of resistance. Rose adjusted the holographic schematic, focusing on the brig's security panel. A smile spread across her face as she located a weakness, an outdated bypass system. "They really didn't think this through, did they?" she muttered. In the adjacent cell, Sophia, the tech specialist of their team, was already one step ahead. She had smuggled a compact multi-tool past the Corsair's pat-down and was busy disassembling the locking mechanism on her cell door. "This is child's play," Sophia whispered into her comm, her voice laced with amusement. Focus, Ethan cut in. We stick to the plan. Disable, disrupt, escape. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. From another cell, Liam chimed in, his voice filled with boyish excitement. Can we at least mess with their systems a bit? Maybe flood their toilets? Just for fun. Rose giggled, but Ethan's tone remained firm. We're not here to cause chaos for chaos's sake. We stick to the mission. Still, Rose couldn't resist adding, a little chaos never hurt anyone. The ambassador's warning. Far away, aboard the Galactic Federation's council station, Ambassador Eliza Moran was done playing nice. Her sharp features, framed by streaks of silver hair, betrayed her rising fury. On the other end of her secure holocall was Captain Vrex. Captain Talcor, Eliza began, her voice like steel. You have no idea the storm you've just unleashed. Vrex sneered. Spare me your theatrics, Ambassador. They're just children. They're not just children, Eliza snapped. They're space scouts, Earth's finest. Each one of them is trained to survive, adapt, and outmaneuver threats far greater than you. Release them now, or I promise you, you'll regret it. Vrex leaned back in his chair, amusement flickering across his reptilian features. Your threats are empty, Ambassador. I hold the cards here. Eliza's eyes narrowed. Not for long. Disrupting the predator. Back in the break, Rose activated her device, sending a subtle but devastating pulse through the Shadowfang's electrical systems. It started small, lights flickered, and a few consoles reset. Then, with a satisfying hum, the brig's locking mechanisms disengage. Sophia's cell door slid open first. She stepped out, her eyes scanning the corridor for guards. Rose, you're a genius, she whispered. Don't I know it? Rose replied smugly as her own door hissed open. Ethan emerged last, his expression calm but determined. Everyone knows the plan. No deviations. Let's move. The team slipped through the dimly lit corridors like shadows, each step deliberate and silent. Sophia hacked into the nearest console, disabling cameras and locking non-essential crew in their quarters. Meanwhile, Liam couldn't resist adding his own flair. As he passed a control panel, he tapped a few buttons, rerouting the ship's environmental systems. Moments later, the bridge's temperature shot up by 20 degrees. On the bridge, Vrex growled as sweat began to bead on his scaled forehead. Karish, what's happening? Environmental malfunction, Captain, Karish stammered. It's spreading through the ship. Vrex slammed a fist against his chair. Fix it. Now. The tempest unleashed. By the time the Corsairs realized what was happening, it was too late. The children had reached the ship's armory, their movements coordinated and efficient. Rose used her device to override the locks, revealing rows of weapons and equipment. We don't need much, Ethan said, grabbing a compact blaster and handing smaller tools to the others. We're not here to fight. We're here to win. Sophia took control of the ship's internal communications, broadcasting a looping message across all frequencies. This ship has been compromised by the space scouts of Earth. Surrender now, and no harm will come to you. The Corsairs, already panicked by the environmental chaos, began to falter. Vrex stormed toward the brig, only to find it empty. His fury boiled over. Find them, he roared. Hunt them down. But the children were always one step ahead, dismantling the Corsair's sense of control piece by piece. The Shadowfang, once a symbol of terror, was quickly becoming a playground for Earth's most resourceful youth. As Rose slipped through a maintenance hatch, she couldn't help but whisper to herself, "They're gonna regret messing with us." The tempest had begun, and the Corsairs were utterly unprepared. The heart of the hunter, the once imposing corridors of the Shadowfang, now pulsed with faint alarms and flickering lights, as though the ship itself was unsettled by its young invaders. Ethan and his team moved with precision, slipping through the labyrinthine passageways. Their training kicked in as they approached the ship's core systems, their sights set on the heart of the vessel, the control nexus. Sophia, the tech specialist, paused at an intersection, her tablet projecting a three-dimensional map of the ship. The control nexus is 2 levels down. But she frowned, zooming in on a heavily shielded section of the map. It's fortified. They got barriers, guards, and an automated defense grid. Ethan nodded, his expression calm but calculating. We'll adapt. Rose, any updates on their comms? Rose grinned, her fingers dancing over her wrist device, jamming their internal comms as we speak. They'll be blind and deaf in about now. Across the ship, Corsairs began to panic as their earpieces crackled with static. Orders went unanswered, and confusion spread like wildfire. The Predator's snare. Captain Vrex stormed onto the bridge, his tail whipping in frustration. The once pristine command center was in disarray, with panels sparking and the air uncomfortably hot from the environmental tampering. Karish stood near the central console, sweat dripping down his feathers as he frantically worked the controls. "Report," Vrex barked. Karish turned, his eyes wide with panic. "Captain, the children. They've compromised multiple systems. We can't track them, and our internal defenses are going haywire." "Children," Vrex growled, slamming his fist on the console. "They're not children. They're trained operatives. I want them captured, alive if possible, but I won't hesitate to vent them into space if they push me further." The room fell silent as his crew absorbed the captain's words. Vrex's reputation for ruthlessness was legendary, but the Shadowfang's crew had never seen him this unhinged. Suddenly, the main screen flickered to life. A message, bold and defiant, appeared in stark white letters against a black background. "We're not your prisoners. This is our ship now. Space Scouts, out." Vrex's claws raked across the console, sparks flying. "They're mocking us. Seal the control nexus and deploy every available guard." Into the lion's den. Ethan led the group down a narrow maintenance shaft, his sharp green eyes scanning every corner. The scouts moved in single file, their breathing steady and synchronized. Each of them carried a small toolkit, tools they'd been trained to use for everything from repairing starships to dismantling alien traps. "Liam," Ethan whispered as they reached a hatch. "You're up." Liam, the team's resident engineer, gave a thumbs up and began unscrewing the hatch's bolts with a silent efficiency. Behind him, Rose hummed softly, her eyes darting around. "I still think we should leave a little surprise behind. Maybe an explosive confetti bomb." Sophia rolled her eyes. "Rose, focus." Liam finally pushed the hatch open, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with glowing conduits. "This is it," he said. "The main access route to the control nexus." Ethan nodded. "Stay sharp. They'll know we're coming." The Corsairs strike back. Vrex wasn't as blind as the scouts believed. Despite their efforts to jam the comms, the Corsairs had fallback systems. A squad of elite enforcers, armed with plasma rifles and energy shields, was already on its way to intercept the children. Karish, monitoring the squad's progress from the bridge, allowed himself a sliver of hope. "Captain, the enforcers will cut them off in 3 minutes." Vrex's lips curled into a predatory smile. "Good. Flush them out. I want their leader brought to me. Alive." The scouts' gambit. As the scouts approached the control nexus, Ethan's earpiece buzzed faintly, a signal from Sophia. "Ethan," she said softly, "we've got incoming. A heavily armed squad. We're outnumbered." Ethan paused, his mind racing. Retreat wasn't an option. The mission depended on taking control of the ship's systems. "We'll split up," he decided. "Rose and Liam, set traps. Slow them down. Sophia, you're with me. We'll breach the nexus." "Got it," Rose said, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. She pulled a handful of small round devices from her pouch, sticky mines designed to disable rather than destroy. "Let's give them a warm welcome. The trap is set." Rose and Liam worked quickly, planting their devices along the corridor. They used the ship's own conduits and wiring, to rave a series of electrified snares and sonic disorienters. Every move was calculated, every trap designed to incapacitate without causing permanent harm. "Think they'll like our little surprises?" Liam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rose chuckled. "They're going to love it." As the last trap was set, the sound of heavy boots echoed down the corridor. The Corsair enforcers were close, breaching the nexus. Meanwhile, Ethan and Sophia reached the control nexus, its entrance guarded by a massive reinforced door. Sophia knelt by the access panel, her fingers flying over the controls. "This lock is ancient," she muttered. "Give me 60 seconds." Ethan positioned himself by the door, his blaster at the ready. His senses were heightened, every sound and shadow scrutinized. "We don't have 60 seconds, Sophia." "Then I'll do it in 40, she quipped, her confidence unshaken. Behind them, the distant sounds of shouting and explosions signaled that Rose and Liam's traps had been sprung. The Corsairs were distracted, but it wouldn't last. With a triumphant beep, the door to the control nexus slid open. Sophia smirked. "Told you I'd make it," the nexus claimed. The scouts stepped into the control nexus, a sprawling room filled with glowing consoles and holographic displays. Ethan immediately began issuing orders. "Sophia, disable their weapons systems. Shut down their shields. Make this ship a sitting duck." Sophia got to work, her hands a blur as she navigated the alien interface. "Give me a few minutes, and this ship will be ours." Back in the corridor, the Corsair enforcers stumbled into Rose and Liam's traps. Sparks flew as the electrified snares activated, and disorienting sonic blasts sent the heavily armed aliens reeling. Amid the chaos, Rose whispered into her comm, "Phase 2 complete. Heading your way." The turning tide. On the bridge, Vrex watched in horror as his ship's systems began to fail one by one. The Shadowfang shields flickered, then vanished. Weapons went offline. Alarms blared. "Captain," Karish shouted, "we've lost control of the ship." Vrex's claws dug into the armrests of his chair. How are they doing this?" Karish glanced at him, his feathers trembling. "They're not just children, Captain. They're something else." The tide had turned, and the hunters were now the hunted. The Shadowfang was no longer Vrex's ship. It belonged to the Space Scouts, the mind of the machine. The Shadowfang groaned under the strain of its failing systems, the once dominant Corsair warship now teetering on the edge of chaos. In the heart of the ship's control nexus, the Space Scouts worked with precision and focus, their young faces illuminated by the glow of alien screens. Ethan stood at the center of the room, his sharp green eyes darting between Sophia and Rose. "Status?" he asked, his voice calm but commanding. Sophia didn't look up from the console, her fingers moving in a blur. "Weapons and shields are completely offline. I'd locked out their navigation too. They're dead in the water." Rose, perched on a swivel chair nearby, was busy with her own task. "I'm rewriting their security protocols," she said, her tone light and almost playful. "By the time I'm done, the only ones this ship will recognize as authorized personnel are us." Ethan nodded, satisfied. "Good. We've got control. Now we need to send a message." The captain's last gambit. On the bridge, Captain Vrex Talcor was spiraling. His claws scraped deep grooves into the armrests of his command chair, and his golden eyes blazed with fury. "Karish," he bellowed, "tell me something useful." Karish, sweating under the mounting pressure, scrambled to analyze the ship's remaining operational systems. "Captain, they've locked us out of everything critical. But—" he hesitated, then pointed to a flickering display. "The emergency override. It's hardwired into the ship's core. They can't disable it remotely." Vrex's lips curled into a vicious smile. "Finally, some good news. Prepare a strike team. I'll personally lead them to the core." Karish's feathers bristled. "But, Captain, the children. They're not children." Vrex snarled, his voice echoing through the bridge. "They're saboteurs, and I'll see to it that they pay for their arrogance." A bold transmission. Back in the control nexus, Ethan adjusted the ship's internal comm system. Static crackled, then cleared, and his voice rang out across every corner of the Shadowfang. "This is Ethan Price, leader of the Space Scouts currently in control of your vessel. To the crew of the Shadowfang, we are not here to harm you. Surrender peacefully, and no harm will come to you. Captain Vrex, this is your last chance to stand down." Ethan ended the transmission, the hum of the console filling the silence that followed. Rose spun her chair around, a playful smirk on her face. "You think he'll listen?" Ethan didn't smile. "No, but the crew might." The core confrontation. Vrex and his hand-picked strike team moved through the dimly lit corridors of the Shadowfang, their heavy boots echoing against the metal floor. The Corsair captain clutched a plasma rifle, his claws tightening around the grip as they neared the ship's core. The core chamber was vast, its centerpiece a pulsating orb of energy suspended in a magnetic field. Vrex's eyes narrowed as he scanned the room, searching for signs of the scouts. It appeared empty. "Fan out," he ordered. "Find them." As the Corsairs spread out, a soft voice echoed through the chamber. "Looking for us." The strike team froze, their weapons raised. From the shadows emerged Ethan, standing tall and confident. Behind him, Rose and Liam flanked the core, their tools in hand. "You're outmatched, Captain," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Stand down." Vrex bared his teeth, his tail lashing behind him. "You dare to challenge me, boy." Ethan met his gaze without flinching. "I don't dare. I just do." A trap within a trap. Vrex fired without hesitation, the plasma bolt streaking toward Ethan. But the boy moved with practiced ease, ducking behind a nearby console. At the same moment, the room came alive with traps. Electrified panels, sonic disruptors, and automated defense turrets sprang to life, targeting the Corsairs. Liam grinned as he activated the final trap, a series of magnetic pulses that yanked the Corsairs' weapons from their hands. "Nice try," he said, his voice filled with youthful glee. Vrex roared in frustration, his claws scraping the floor as he lunged toward Ethan. But Rose was quicker. With a flick of her wrist, she activated a gravity well projector, pinning the captain to the ground. "I'd stay down if I were you," she said, her tone light, but laced with warning. Unity and defiance. As the Corsairs were subdued, a transmission from the bridge crackled through the room. It was Karish, his voice trembling. "Captain, the crew is refusing to fight. They're standing down." Vrex's eyes burned with rage as he struggled against the gravity well. "Cowards," he spat. "You'll all regret this." Ethan stepped forward, his expression calm but firm. "Your crew is smarter than you are. They know when they've lost." Sophia's voice cut through the tension as she appeared on the comms. "All systems are under our control, Ethan. The Shadowfang is officially ours. A new mission." With the Corsairs subdued and the ship firmly in their hands, Ethan turned to his team. "We're not done yet. We need to get back to Earth, and we're taking this ship with us." Liam frowned. "What about the Corsairs?" "We'll keep them locked up," Ethan replied. "But we're not leaving them to die. They'll face justice the right way." Rose sighed dramatically. "You're no fun, Ethan. I was hoping for a little more chaos." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Chaos is easy. Doing the right thing is harder. And that's why we're here." As the scouts set to work preparing the ship for its journey home, the Shadowfang hummed with a new energy. A ship once feared, now commanded by Earth's finest. The tables had turned, and the galaxy was about to learn what it truly meant to challenge humanity. The rise of the scouts. The Shadowfang drifted silently in the void, a once feared predator now tamed by its unlikely captors. Inside the ship, the space scouts were hard at work, turning their victory into something greater than survival. The control nexus buzzed with activity as Sophia coordinated systems, Liam tinkered with the ship's engineering, and Ethan mapped out their next moves. "Status update," Ethan called out, his tone calm but commanding. Sophia swiveled in her chair, her fingers still flying across the console. Shields are back online. Our shields, not theirs. I've reprogrammed their comms to only respond to us, and navigation is fully operational. Liam popped his head out from under a console, his face smudged with grease. Engines are good to go. If we hit any turbulence, it's not on me. Ethan nodded. Good. We'll plot a course back to Earth. But first, he turned to Rose, who was lounging against a console, a sly grin on her face. How's our guest? Rose tapped her comm device, pulling up a live feed of the break. Captain Vrex is pacing like a caged animal. He's mad, but he's not stupid. He knows he's lost. Ethan allowed himself a rare smile. Let's see if he's ready to talk. Negotiating with a predator. The brig was quieter than usual, the dim lights casting long shadows across the cells. Captain Vrex Talcor sat in the corner of his cell, his golden eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. When the door hissed open, he rose to his full height, his imposing frame towering over Ethan and Rose as they entered. You've come to gloat, haven't you? Vrex growled, his voice low and menacing. Ethan stepped forward, unflinching. We didn't take your ship to humiliate you, Captain. We took it to survive. But now that we have it, we're offering you a choice. Vrex's claws twitched, his gaze narrowing. What kind of choice? Rose leaned casually against the wall, her voice cutting through the tension. Cooperate with us, and we'll make sure you and your crew live to see another day. Resist, and well, space is a cold place. Ethan shot her a warning glance but didn't contradict her. You're a leader, Captain. You know when a battle is over. Work with us, and we'll ensure your crew isn't left to the mercy of the Federation. Vrex's lips curled into a sneer. Mercy? From humans? Don't make me laugh. Ethan's voice hardened. This isn't a negotiation for our benefit. It's for yours. The Federation doesn't take kindly to Corsairs, and they'll take even less kindly to someone who kidnapped space scouts. You'll be lucky if they give you a trial. For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Then Vrex's shoulders sagged, and he let out a low, defeated growl. Fine. I'll cooperate, but don't think for a second that you've tamed me. Rose smirked. Oh, we wouldn't dream of it. Preparing for the journey. Back in the control nexus, the scouts worked seamlessly to prepare the Shadowfang for its journey back to Earth. The ship, with its advanced alien technology, was faster and more powerful than anything in the Federation's fleet. But the scouts knew that speed alone wouldn't guarantee their safety. We'll need to avoid major trade routes, Sophia said, her eyes scanning the holographic star map. If the Corsairs have allies out there, they'll come looking for this ship. Liam tapped a glowing panel, adjusting the ship's power distribution. I've rerouted energy to the cloaking system. It won't hide us completely, but it'll make us harder to track. Ethan nodded. Good. Rose, make sure the crew stays locked down. We can't afford any surprises. Rose saluted with exaggerated flair. Aye, Captain. Unseen threats. As the Shadowfang accelerated toward Earth, a shadow loomed in the distance. A second Corsair ship, smaller but faster, had picked up their trail. Its captain, a wiry alien with a face like a hawk, studied the readings on his console with growing suspicion. They've got the Shadowfang, the captain muttered, and they've disabled its distress beacon. Interesting. His first officer, a towering figure with thick, armored scales, growled in response. Do we intercept? Not yet, the captain said, his sharp eyes gleaming. Let them think they're safe. Then we strike. A test of wits. Back aboard the Shadowfang, the scouts detected the incoming ship almost immediately. Rose, monitoring the sensors, frowned as a blip appeared on her screen. Ethan, we've got company. Ethan moved quickly to her side, his jaw tightening as he studied the readings. It's a Corsair ship, smaller, but armed to the teeth. Sophia's voice rang out from across the room. We can't outrun them. Not with a ship this size. Ethan's mind raced. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but not outsmarted. We're not running. We're going to outthink them. Liam grinned, his excitement palpable. Finally, some action. Ethan began issuing orders, his voice steady and confident. Liam, prepare the ship's decoy drones. Rose, set up false energy signatures to make it look like we've split into multiple ships. Sophia, keep an eye on their movements. We need to know their every move before they make it. The ambush. As the enemy ship closed in, the Shadowfang sprang its trap. Drones launched from hidden ports, scattering in all directions and emitting signals identical to the Shadowfang's. The smaller Corsair ship hesitated, its sensors overwhelmed by the sudden swarm of targets. They're confused, Sophia reported, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. They don't know which signal to follow. Ethan didn't relax. Good. Now let's make our move. Under his direction, the Shadowfang powered up its cloaking system and slipped into the shadows of a nearby asteroid field. The enemy ship, still chasing decoys, flew past without noticing. As the Shadowfang emerged from the asteroid field, the scouts breathed a collective sigh of relief. Liam punched the air. And that's how you outsmart a Corsair. Ethan allowed himself a small smile. One battle down. Let's hope it's the last. The journey home. With the immediate threat behind them, the scouts resumed their journey. But the victory was bittersweet. They knew they weren't just returning home. They were carrying a message. A message to the galaxy that humanity's strength wasn't just in its technology or firepower, but in its resilience, ingenuity, and unity. As the stars streaked past the viewport, Ethan sat quietly, his thoughts focused on the challenges ahead. They had won this battle, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was far from over. The hidden hand, the vastness of space, stretched endlessly before the Shadowfang, its battered exterior belying the precision with which it was now operated. Inside, the space scouts worked tirelessly to ensure their grip on the stolen Corsair ship remained unyielding. The atmosphere aboard was tense, each team member keenly aware that their journey back to Earth was far from secure. Ethan stood at the command console, staring at the holographic star map projected before him. The journey so far had been fraught with danger, but the Shadowfang was making steady progress. Yet a nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach told him something wasn't right. Sophia, he called, his voice firm. Run another scan for pursuers. I don't trust that we've shaken all of them. Sophia glanced up from her workstation, her brow furrowed. Already on it. The last Corsair ship was fooled by the decoys, but if they sent a distress signal before we scrambled their systems, we might have a bigger problem. Rose leaned back in her chair, casually spinning a small hacking tool between her fingers. Bigger problem. Like an ambush. A fleet. Maybe a mysterious, unstoppable alien death ray. Liam groaned from his corner, where he was patching up one of the Shadowfang's power conduits. Rose, can you not jinx us? Before Rose could reply, Sophia's console beeped sharply. Her expression turned grim. Ethan, you're not going to like this. We've got another ship on an intercept course, bigger than the last one. A calculated risk. Ethan's jaw tightened as he studied the incoming data. The new ship was massive, a war cruiser by the looks of it, with firepower that could shred the Shadowfang in moments. Unlike their previous encounter, this wasn't a vessel they could confuse or evade. They're not bothering with subtlety, Sophia remarked. They're broadcasting Corsair military codes. Of course they are, Ethan muttered. They know we have their flagship. They'll stop at nothing to get it back. Liam chimed in, his voice tinged with worry. We can't outrun them, and we definitely can't outgun them. What's the plan? Ethan's mind raced. We'll use the one thing we still have, the element of surprise. Rose perked up, her mischievous grin returning. Ooh, are we finally going to use my idea? Depends, Ethan said. Does it involve explosions? Always. The Corsairs close in. As the Corsair war cruiser loomed closer, Captain Vrex Talcor, still confined to the brig, paced furiously in his cell. His claws raked across the metal walls, his frustration boiling over. The humiliation of losing his ship to a group of human children was unbearable, but the arrival of reinforcements rekindled a flicker of hope. He pressed his face against the cell's energy barrier, growling as Rose appeared on the other side, her hands on her hips. "Your friends are here," she said, her tone mockingly cheerful. "But don't worry, we've got it under control." "You fools," Vrex snarled. "You have no idea what's coming for you. That's not just a ship. It's a Corsair dreadnought. It'll crush you." Rose smirked. "You're awfully chatty for someone in a cage." Ethan's voice crackled over Rose's comm. "Rose, focus. We need those charges set in the forward cargo bay." "On it, boss," Rose replied, giving Vrex a mock salute before striding away. The setup. In the forward cargo bay, Rose and Liam worked quickly, placing compact explosive charges along the walls and supports. These weren't ordinary bombs. They were EMP emitters, designed to disable the Corsair ship's systems without causing widespread destruction. "This better work," Liam muttered, tightening a panel around one of the charges. "It'll work," Rose said confidently. "And if it doesn't, well, at least it'll be a good show." Meanwhile, Sophia tapped into the Shadowfang's comm array, broadcasting a carefully crafted distress signal. It was bait, designed to draw the war cruiser closer while masking the scouts' true position. "They're biting," Sophia reported, her eyes fixed on the screen. "They're slowing down to lock onto the signal." Ethan stood behind her, his arms crossed. "Good. Once they're in range, we'll hit them with everything we've got." The trap is sprung. The Corsair dreadnought came to a halt, its massive bulk casting a shadow over the smaller Shadowfang. The scouts watched as its docking bay began to open, a clear signal that the Corsairs intended to board and reclaim their stolen ship. "Wait for it," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. The dreadnought's docking clamps extended, inching toward the Shadowfang. Then, with a sudden surge of energy, the scouts' EMP charges detonated. A wave of blue light rippled outward, engulfing the dreadnought. Lights flickered, engines sputtered, and the enormous ship shuddered as its systems went offline. "We did it," Liam shouted, pumping his fist in the air. "Not yet," Ethan said. "Sophia, what's their status?" Sophia scanned the dreadnought's readings. "They're dead in the water. No comms, no weapons, no propulsion." Ethan nodded. "Good. Let's get out of here before they recover." The escape. The Shadowfang's engines roared to life as Liam pushed the ship to its limits. The once imposing dreadnought drifted helplessly behind them, its crew scrambling to repair the damage. Ethan stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. "Sophia, plot a course to the nearest Federation outpost. We need to hand over Vrex and his crew before the Corsairs regroup." Sophia nodded, her fingers dancing across the console. "Course set. We'll be in Federation space within the hour." Rose leaned back in her chair, a satisfied grin on her face. "I told you my plan would work." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "You did good, Rose. All of you did." The warning. As the Shadowfang sped toward safety, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was far from over. The Corsairs were relentless, and their reach extended far beyond a single ship. This victory was only the beginning of a larger conflict, one that would test humanity's strength and resilience in ways they had never imagined. For now, though, the scouts had proven one thing beyond a doubt. No matter how powerful the enemy, humanity would always find a way to survive.